Hey guys, Like here, and as you can see, it is now 2021, and we are hopefully moving on to better things. Now, of course, as you guys, people tend to criticize, people with sex dolls, love dolls, aka, mannequins, etc. And while I, you know, think it maybe looks or can look kind of weird, obviously. I think that's kind of the biggest thing when it comes to having one of these things is that, it looks weird, you know, because people think with their eyes. They don't think with their minds, too much. At least not a lot of people anyway, it seems. If you see somebody with a doll in a park, even if he's just sitting on the bench with the doll, somebody is going to look at that and think something's not right. And it's, of course, a bit understandable because, you can tell when you get up close enough to these things that they aren't a real person. And so that kind of kicks in that natural instinct that people tend to have when something's not really a person, you know? And, as far as how we get categorized, I always think it's funny the things that people come up with, you know? Let's just say, for instance, something that I've heard a lot recently is how picky apparently love doll owners are. That's apparently the reason why we have these love dolls, aka sex dolls, is because we are too picky to have an average looking woman. Now, I might agree with this to an extent. I mean, for some love doll owners, but again, not everybody is the same. Also, I think it's funny because, again, how pretty much all flocks of life have a love doll now. Married people have a love doll, women have a love doll, etc. I mean, your teacher at your school possibly has a love doll. Some of my coworkers at my father's job who work for the government probably at least a couple of them have a love doll. I mean, etc. I mean, all flocks of life have these love dolls now. And so I always think it's hilarious when people will assume shit like, oh, this person has a love doll just because they're too picky, or because something is wrong with them, or because they have a fetish for dolls. I mean, not to say that some of them probably do have a fetish for dolls, but that's not really the point, of course, when it comes to getting one of these things. It is what I've said before, is a masturbation tool, that people get. I mean, just like when you get a dildo. Obviously, a dildo is easier to handle than a love doll or, one of those fleshlights. Some people will say shit like, oh, I think it's weird, to have one of those dolls versus a fleshlight. And then I'm just like, okay, so which do you think is more weird? Having a severed vagina or penis? Or how about just having something that at least looks like what you're intending to have sex with, like a love doll? Which one do you think is more weird? And of course, they will say shit to me like, to respect their opinion because they have nothing else to say to me. They always say that shit to me when I say that. And then sometimes they'll say shit to me like, "Oh, I only do humans" or something like that. And it's just like, again, it's just a masturbation tool. I'm not replacing anybody here. Even if I didn't have this love doll, I seriously would still be basically in the same state as far as relationships go. I don't really care to get married. I don't care to get into a relationship. I know that if I try to get into a relationship of any kind, to that degree anyway, that it would not make me any happier. For me personally. I mean, for you, I mean, who knows? Maybe it'll make you happier. Maybe it'll make life easier on you. Maybe you met the right person. But for me, I seriously don't give a crap. And, some people, and their wives. Like they've even noted that some people's wives are actually starting to get, their husbands' love dolls nowadays. Sometimes it probably doesn't happen real often, but it's starting to happen. And when I first was getting into this kind of stuff and first learning about it 10 years ago, just about 10 years ago, 9 years ago, something like that. I would say the majority of people that had them probably weren't married or something. But nowadays, I would say up to at least 30 to 40% of people that have a love doll nowadays actually are married nowadays. And it's probably going to become at least 50%, if not more so, in the next, I'd say, 10 years or something, I would say. A lot of people are getting this stuff nowadays. And also just the notion like, oh, he's getting a love doll just because he can't get laid. Also remember they used to say the same shit when he got a fleshlight. But, of course, nowadays they're more focused on the love doll thing, of course. And let me tell you, man, I've seen women and men both have sometimes up to, like, it seems like hundreds of toys, sex toys, dildos, masturbators, love dolls, etc. And for some reason, it seems like most people like that have all this, all these toys. In fact, I also remember this one lady I once met over the internet. She had one of those swings, those sex swings. Most people that have these sex toys tend to actually have more sex more often than people that actually don't have sex toys at all. Actually, if you believe that, but it actually is true. Because, these people are looking for more satisfaction in that way. So they're getting more sex more often. And just like I've told some people, you can find sex. I mean, sex is more available nowadays than it ever has been. I mean, shit, I could be texting somebody for sex while I'm at work and then go have sex with them at their place and then be back just in time for my wife's dinner after cheating on her. We are just so fucking available nowadays. It's not even funny. And that's, of course, another reason why I think it is good to get one of these things. Is because I just don't think that people seem to be satisfied enough nowadays, it seems. Because we have just become more and more and more oversexed. But instead of embracing something that is new, of course, people have always got to criticize it. Change, change, change. Sometimes change is a good thing. Sometimes it actually is a good thing. And even if it isn't a good thing, sometimes it does happen for a reason. And people need to think about these reasons before coming to such a big, judgment like they are sometimes. Now, of course, I talk about this kind of stuff all day, so when somebody tries to argue with me about it, I'm pretty much unprepared. I've pretty much heard it all. I have just heard it all. I mean, and I think it's silly how so many people think that this is so weird, because even when I first was starting to learn that they had this kind of stuff, like the Real Doll, when I first laid eyes on the Real Doll site, I already knew what it was. I knew that when I was looking at this realistic looking love doll on Real Doll and other love dolls like it, that these are just sex toys. They're just sex toys. That's all they are. They're just for fun and masturbation, role play, etc. But I always just think it's also so funny how many people just come to their insecurities and, pass judgment in such a negative way. I sometimes wonder how hard it is to be somebody like that, to be so fucking negative all the damn time. You know what I mean? To be negative like that all the time, I mean, it must make their life so much more stressful than it would, let's say somebody like myself who's very accepting and laid back. You know what I mean? Like, it really is just ridiculous. And again, just because somebody has a love doll doesn't mean that they're overly picky. I mean, just think about it. It's just how it is with every group of people. And it's just how it is with all groups of people. Just because you have a love doll doesn't mean you're sexist. Although sometimes maybe you are, but sometimes you're not. Just because you're a sex doll owner doesn't mean that you're picky. Sometimes maybe you're picky, sometimes maybe you're not. It's the same with everybody in every other fucking group. Just because you have a sex doll doesn't mean you don't have a job or you can't support yourself or get married. And who knows, maybe in some cases you are, but sometimes you're not. It's kind of 50-50 with this shit. Just like, again, every other group on this freaking planet. But it's funny because, that's just how the human race is sometimes. They cannot look at either the other sex or another group of people that is different from them, and they, for some reason, since the beginning of humanity, cannot look at that other group or sex like they're another human being. While maybe some can, like myself, some can't. They just do not have the thought process to have that kind of understanding, which is something that we need to understand with these types of people. They just do not have that kind of thought process. Once they have learned one thing that they learned when they were a kid or something, they cannot unlearn that. They cannot go beyond that. And sometimes, maybe in some cases, they might think, once they get to a certain age or they got out of high school, that they've learned enough about life. Well, the truth is that even when you get out of high school, you still have to learn things. Just because you went through high school doesn't mean you know everything. You have to keep on learning. My stepmother, Terry, my father, shit, they don't know everything either. They're still learning. Just like my grandfather, he's still learning. He's like over 70 years old now, by the way. He is still learning new shit. And that's just how life is. If you stop your progression of learning, you never succeed. You will never succeed. I don't care who you are. You're never going to succeed on the inside or the outside or etc. You just have no chance of succeeding. That being said, I guess I'll just end the video there because I'm just starting to go off. But yeah, just think about what I said. If you have any more questions, comments, just lay them down. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.